Facebook Live, family and friends. Sorry, I almost just punched you in the face. Elliot Hunter, the head therapist, is back with another repeat interview with my boy Art.
Hi,
Art,
everybody.
what's happening? Tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what you specialize in again, so we can get that started.
I'm Art Ginley. I have the business Integrative Wellbeing, and I work with chronic illness and complex trauma. I work from a Gestalt perspective, and that's all I can think of at the moment. Running on limited hours.
Right. Both of us today, everybody. Thumbs up if you've ever experienced a long day, because I know you all have. We are running on fumes, but we are happy to be here no matter what. So as the title states, martial arts, body-mind connection, lay it on us. Tell us about your experience, because as soon as you left the last time we talked, you were like, yeah, let's talk about martial arts. So I'm here and ready to hear all about it.
All right. So what I'd say is I grew up going to a bunch of different martial arts, but what I do now is a traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu called Koryu, which means a traditional school. So it's the type of school that's been around since our school in different lineages has been around for about 200 years.
That's a lot of years.
Goes back to another lineage that goes back another probably about 400 or 500 years. So,
wow. Okay.
It's
an old martial.
It's connected into all these concepts that have come through Japan and come through the samurai traditions. And that's what we practice. We do sword work. We do, wooden swords against wooden swords. We also do a lot of just like hand-to-hand stuff. What we tend to do is not forms like in karate, but actually paired up, where it's like we're always doing something with somebody else, because this is a piece that I think connects back into the mental health and therapy, which is we're working on a concept of ever deepening connection and understanding of how we're connecting to other people and using our body to make those connections in a subtle and oftentimes almost unnoticeable way.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
What does an unnoticeable and subtle way look like? If you could literally do this on camera right now with me as an experiential.
So if you'll,
yes.
Can we stand? Do we have room for that?
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So an example being, and this is also a Gestalt piece, if you push, right, that this is an initial way that we make a connection.
Okay.
Now, if I want to actually connect to you, I have to have some pressure back from you.
Right.
Now, if I start, I can really push in.
Yeah.
And that's that kind of like, that's
what the hell are you doing?
larger scale of, you notice that, you feel that.
Okay.
But if I really can connect my body in and feel your spine, then when I feel your spine, I can feel down to your toes. And now I can feel that I actually have connected into your shoulders.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
you can feel that tension in your shoulders.
Yeah.
So now if I wanted to actually move you, and I tried to move through there, I walk right through you.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
So
I like that. That was cool. So that was subtle.
Yeah.
Yet, depending on that type of connection that we're having in that moment, it can feel different.
Yeah.
And I think that relates a lot to mental health in regards of, it can't always be subtle. It can feel abrupt. It can feel more intense. It can feel less intense. So I think in just that moment of connecting with you in that way, I could see and feel how doing that with somebody in a very intentional way with this Japanese jiu-jitsu would like be totally mind-altering, honestly. Seriously.
Well, and that's something we do in Gestalt work. The pushing, the pushing itself as a way of connecting and feeling another person. And this can be for somebody who maybe just like has some anger or something going on for them that they really need to connect to, but it doesn't feel safe enough until they can have that physical connection in a way that they feel somebody with structure and strength that can hold that. And then that person can actually really start to connect in and maybe connect into themselves, their own feelings, their own emotions, what's moving through their body.
Right.
So in that piece, I think that's something we're constantly working on. I'll get somebody up in a session and I'll say like, push. And then we get to feel how they're pushing.
Right.
And people come up and they'll push and they'll want to just like throw me through a wall, right?
Knock us
and
over.
somebody else comes up and and their version of pushing is they're so limp that you can't even like feel them there, and you're going to walk right through them.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes into a whole piece of like, how do we hold ourselves in our life?
Yes.
And how do we meet every single interaction? Because we're always going for, at least from the Gestalt perspective, contact. And contact is that like that connection of like my force, my energy connecting into your force, your energy, your sense of like, can be your emotions, it can be your feelings, it can be whatever's coming through that really needs to connect to somebody else.
Totally.
And that's the point where we meet.
Got it. So how does that translate then to this idea of sword work? Because I feel like that seems like almost like violent in some way. Okay, and that's just my perspective, right? Like I have a sword, I'm going to hit you with that sword or what have you. So how does that look in the practice that you have? I mean, is it sparring? Is it just like I'm going to hit my sword against your sword, see what that feels like, or is it like what's the goal? I guess.
Yeah, there's two main forms of what we do, which is there's Bato Jutsu, which is the actual drawing of a sword and learning to draw a sword and cut. And that's not necessarily with somebody else there because you're expecting to use a lot of power.
Yes.
And then the other form is Kenjutsu, which is a lot of times that's when we have the wooden swords or sometimes those bamboo swords you see in a lot of traditional Japanese films.
Yes, absolutely.
And those will go against each other.
Okay.
And you really connect with that. And the idea that really shows up a lot there is the ability to connect not directly through to someone else, but to actually connect through another object, which gives you this subtler feel of what's going on in your body and what's going on in somebody else's body.
Mm-hmm.
And on another level, that like violent portion you talk about is when you get to a level that you understand what you're doing and you feel safe with the people you're working with, it actually has this incredibly like charged release to it. I like the description of kind of like lightning.
Okay.
Right? When you meet somebody and you go at somebody and you both know that you can go pretty intensely into that.
Yes.
And you're not going to hurt each other because you know what you're doing, you know your roles. There's this very clear kind of organizational structure to what we're doing.
Sure.
And then you can hit those swords into each other. It actually creates this big release of a lot of energy that gets built up, and it can feel amazing.
You're describing it. I'm like, I want to do this. I mean, who wouldn't really want to feel that? Right. I mean, like in regards to how many people have I worked with that have felt so tense or just not the capability to feel like they can be aggressive or what have you. And you're tweaking it in that way of really hunkering down to the points that it's not about the aggression. It's more about the release of that in a kind of controlled way. Yeah. In some ways, what I'm hearing from that, which I think is such a cool experience, because I was working with somebody the other day. He's like, I got so mad, I got so down on myself that I just went and bashed my head against the wall, like with a helmet on. They're playing hockey, and I was like, okay, like I guess if that's how you need to experience that, like that's okay. Like let's think about what we can do going forward, to make sure we're not hurting ourselves. And he's like, well, that's really hard because I don't have a lot of avenues in my expression to do that. Like I'm a bigger guy, like people, I don't want to seem like I'm aggressive. Yet what you're saying with this art is that it's really good for our mental health and just struggle in general, just to actually do that and be okay with it. Yeah. And like welcome it. It's a piece, I think, that like, as long as we're in contact, we have that like secure sense of relationship with somebody else, and we can see that other person as a human being across from us. Right. We can get as big in that energy as we want. It's when we lose that idea of like, there's a person across from me. Right. And we're just in whatever we're in our own experience. That's when we become maybe dangerous to somebody. Right. But now, in therapy, I do not bring in swords and swing around at each other. But if somebody comes in and they have something kind of like bottled up that really needs to get released, and that can be from trauma, that can be from relational issues, it can be whatever's coming up, that there's that opportunity to say like, okay, well, push. And maybe if that's not enough, maybe we need to get somebody else in a group that can do something like that and it can hold that. And I think there's some great people out there doing that work, because there's a lot of people who have a lot that they need to just get that energy out. Yes.
so that they can figure out where they need to go next.
Totally. So let's talk about how you got into it. Like, what was the driving force for you to start practicing?
For me, okay.
Disclose as much as you want.
Funny story.
We like funny stories here.
So when I was maybe 6 years old, one of the Ninja Turtles came to my birthday.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like one of the actual turtles from the movies.
What?
Because he was, and I don't remember his name exactly.
The actor, obviously.
It was an actor. It wasn't an actual turtle.
There's a lot of people out there, we're very, very rigid.
Yeah, right? Okay. Don't want to confuse. Mutated teenage turtle did not come to my birthday.
Okay.
But the actor actually worked at the energy lab that my dad worked for, which was cool. Cyndia Labs.
Nice.
And so my dad knew him, brought him to the birthday, and it was just, that was the coolest birthday ever.
I'm sure, man.
And I loved the turtles, and from there, I just wanted to stay in martial arts. Okay. But I wanted to find something that really had that sense of discipline.
Sure.
And that deepening of how am I going to understand myself, my body, my mind better and better so that I can continually progress. And this school is one that I really found that does that.
So you've been doing this since you were 6 years old, is what you're saying?
Not this school.
Oh, okay.
I've done other martial arts. This school I've been doing for about 7-8 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's a part of your everyday kind of life. Like you've committed to it. You don't.
Oh, yeah.
Every week, every day. How does it work for you?
I try to go at least twice a week.
Okay.
This is something. This one's a long-term kind of.
Okay.
If you really want to get the benefits of it, if you really want to kind of get towards mastery, you have to commit to it for a lifetime, right? I mean, our head instructor was still doing sword work until the day that he died, basically.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that was it was still there, and it was still for him that there was stuff that he needed to figure out and deepen in his understanding of it, and he was an incredible man.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
That sounds so cool. I mean, to think that this can be a lifelong thing that I think we can work towards, I think I relate to in the sense of just the therapeutic work that I've done is so many people want this quick fix, and I don't know how you've felt with working with clients over the last whatever amount of time you've been practicing, but it's like their progress needs to be, and the expectation that their progress needs to be always going up and up and up to me is really hard. As long as things come up, they're trying to put in the work. If they are, it's just impossible, I think, to say that it's only going to be this way. So to hear that somebody, you doing sword work to the day they died, I think is relatable in regards of just that it takes work and time.
Yeah.
And energy.
Yeah. And I like this concept. There's the idea of shugyo.
Okay.
And shugyo, there's actually Musha Shugyo is like a samurai's kind of pilgrimage, their quest where they go out and they maybe go to different schools and they just kind of wander the countryside and learn and kind of discover themselves more. But shugyo itself is this concept that's taken on the way that we learn through connecting body and mind. And if you think of it as spirals going down, that you have body and mind continually trying to sync up. And so it's not about necessarily getting to a higher place, but it's getting to a place where more what I feel, what I think, what my experience is in the moment is all synced up. So if I'm working with my sword or if I'm working with a partner, that we're doing something, and I don't necessarily have to think about every single thing that I'm doing. I'm just moving with what I know is there and in the moment.
Yeah, man, that is so humbling to hear from somebody. You know what I mean? In regards of this idea of using an art, like a martial art, to have all those different connections and actually feel this, have it tangible, to say there's this thing, shugyo, that's an actual thing that you can work towards, I think is so helpful because so many people, sometimes people don't think about their road to recovery, we'll say, in that way at all. It's they're not looking for something other than to be not using or not depressed or what have you. And this idea a spiral, I think, just kind of materializes that every little thing can spiral up, down, here, there, and everywhere. I think it's really cool.
Sometimes you get more out of sync. Sometimes you get more in sync, and that idea of flow is getting more into that place of what I'm doing is just feels right in the moment, and I'm just moving with it. And in all of that too, there are the plateaus.
Totally.
I think that's a place where clients get really stuck is they maybe have a big breakthrough or make some really big progress, do some major work, and then it's like there's a year or longer of like, okay, well, I've made it to this stage. Now, where do I go from here?
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, in essence of, and I think so many of our clients put that on us to decide.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, no.
That's
I might help you come to that realization of like what that looks like, but I'm not going to tell you what to do once that realization comes to fruition.
Yeah. It's a hard place for a therapist.
Yes.
Because you might hold that and you might have an idea, but you really got to let them figure that out and work through. I think it's the working through those really long, hard phases that end up bringing those great benefits later, where you're like, oh, this is where I want my life to be. But you have to do the work to get there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd be very intrigued, about these types of martial arts, because I've never done any martial art in my life. But the way that you're describing it seems like it would be beneficial. I had somebody on a little bit ago who is a Tai Chi practitioner. John Lear, super cool guy. Hey, John, hope you're watching. What's up, brother? I just the amount of people who practice this and how I feel like just need to give that to other people. Because it's just, I don't know, just being a part of it and experiencing it myself, just that with that little demonstration we did, I was like, yeah. Like, I'm down.
Yeah. No,
that might just be an easy fucking sell, but like, I'm like, yeah, man, like, I could get down with this.
Well, and that was the stuff that sold me.
Right then and there, right? I mean, it was a Ninja
You go into this place, and some guy shows you this stuff that you're like, I thought this was all just
man.
Kind of like, did it really exist? Yeah. And then on top of that, like in this school, we talk about not like the chi, the moving of energy, but literally like what are the physical ways that we're doing that? Which muscles are we using? How are we actually connecting in? How do you feel somebody else's like body, their structure, all the ways from their shoulder to their toes, and then work with that. And I think it's a great place for learning boundaries, for learning connection, just like, all those places I block myself are then the places that I can't connect into somebody else, or the places I get stuck. Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, it's almost like a DBT skill within itself. Like in some regards, like these strong boundaries, the connection, how to communicate effectively with your body, with that being connected to your mind, how that may affect others, how you coming off may affect somebody versus how they come off and affecting you. It's all very connected. I think that's really cool that there's an art out there that you're practicing that you can give that to other people. So what does like an everyday kind of practice look like when you're at I don't want to call it a dojo.
It is a dojo.
Oh, okay. At the dojo.
Is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we do either sword work or jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
When we do sword work, typically it starts off with everybody lining up and then drawing their swords and practicing different cuts. And then after that, it might move into as I said, the wooden sword work.
Is it only swords?
Typically, we'll do one night of just sword work.
Okay, but
the
it's not
sword
like
work is like more important to us.
Okay.
Oh, we do,
Okay, good.
We do use other weapons.
Okay, we'll talk about the sword work and then we'll get into the weapons because I want to know about the weapon.
And with the sword work, we'll practice that because a big piece is that like when we understand the sword work, it makes us such better martial artists when it comes to jujitsu. So it's like that translates a lot better into our like hand-to-hand combat than the hand-to-hand into sword work.
How?
Because it's more complex of a skill. Because you have that sword that you're trying to actually extend all of your energy, all of your cutting, your strength, your power into that. So when you understand how to do that, it makes it a lot easier to move into like, oh my goodness, somebody's grabbing me on the wrist.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never thought about it that way, but the idea of, this does take a lot of time, energy, and practice to get like what that feels like and looks like versus just like,
well, and you'd see like when somebody first comes into the school, it seems like, oh yeah, this is simple, I just take the sword out and then cut. It looks awkward, it looks super uncomfortable. They're trying to figure out, what do I do with this long thing in my hands? And then after maybe a year or two, they start to really get that feel for it. And you can see all of a sudden it's like really clean, crisp movements. They start to speed up. They start to be able to play around a little more with like how they're doing that. Yeah.
Very cool. So then what other weapons would you be bringing in?
We use short swords called kodachis or wakizashi. We also use tantos, which are the little daggers.
The ones that they see in the movies where the guys go like this when they're
those ones. People would typically, like the samurai, would carry them on them. A lot of times, what the samurai were actually doing was either like fighting in a full-on battlefield, which required a whole different set of equipment, or they were acting as protectors or as assassins. And so they had to have small weapons, things that they could carry around easily. They had their typical kind of setup of how they dressed themselves, how they appeared, and that was allowed for most places. And then they had their secretive weapons, which were things like small, like chopstick-sized things that were actually metal with really sharp ends.
Yeah.
Assassins. Yeah, exactly. They had all those components.
Love it. Okay, so you feel like you're at a place where practice 7-8 years. This is something that you do regularly, and it's something you enjoy thoroughly. Can you name an experience that you had where you worked with somebody at the dojo that it was like not so good? As in like somebody new came in or something like that. I'd just be curious because we're talking a lot about this idea of it's always going to be this or that. I'm just curious for your experience.
And to be honest, because it's such a specific school, and it has a very specific like method of how people join the school, that we don't get a lot of that. We actually get a lot of ex-military, and then a lot of like scientists. There's a lot of PhDs in the school and really well-educated people, and they're all really great people.
Sure.
All over the world. We have a dojo in New Zealand, a dojo in Spain.
Wow.
All
That's
over.
so cool.
But
community.
You do get people with ego.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
And there's definitely a portion of people coming in and wanting to be strong, wanting to be powerful, wanting to show what they can do, not listening. And some of the ways that you work with that is that when you really understand what you're doing, that way it might get a little more actually aggressive. Because if somebody starts to give you a hard time, then you start to do the form a lot more true to what the form is supposed to do.
Sure.
So if somebody's grabbing onto your wrist and you're supposed to be doing some kind of lock on their wrist, when we're working with people we trust, we tend to like both kind of give the right amount of, my opponent is going to give me that resistance to the point that I can feel what I'm doing. And then I do what I need to, and they're not going to give me a hard time. Somebody that gives me a hard time, I might then go, okay, well, let's turn the force up on this and see how you tolerate it. And
I'm going to put you in a death choke.
Exactly. And other people, it's things, you go out to a seminar and you encounter all kinds of different people with different martial arts backgrounds. And some of them are, Aikido is incredibly soft, and sometimes that has its definite place. But also, when you're incredibly soft, you leave yourself open to physical striking. Mm-hmm. When you're incredibly aggressive, you leave yourself rigid and open to that softness. So it's finding those things and just kind of playing around with, if you're going to mess with me, I'm going to mess with you. And if I really know what I'm doing, then it's fine. Sure. And nobody's going to get seriously hurt, but maybe it is going to be a blow to your ego to find out like, oh, my sheer strength and will isn't enough. I actually have to have some kind of structure and sense of what I'm doing behind.
Yeah, the idea of being able to reflect, I think, is what you're getting at. Like the idea of how clients can come into a room and say like, I don't trust you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to give you anything. Yeah. And that for me being like the biggest blow to my ego of like, what the hell did I do wrong? So in regards to relating martial arts to the mental health world, it's very, again, still connected in that way of shit like.
And you meet that energy.
Right. That affects me. That affects them. It's all similar in that regard, to think about how, those events will happen.
Yeah.
In any setting that we're in, really, at this point, and that's hard to navigate. And yet, if we keep at it and we practice and we allow ourselves, like, I guess, some sort of sense of vulnerability and what I'm hearing you're describing, then, we can really push through.
Yeah. I mean, I think two really big components is like the skillfulness of the therapist. Like we can get through a lot of those things and navigate them, but the more skillful we are, the less it has a huge impact on us. Somebody comes in and they're like, screw you, or they're just totally shut down. We have a lot of skillful means to work with that. And on the other side is the relationship component, where you really get to be there in that room and maybe understand what this person is doing to me and what I'm doing to this person, and bring that in. And that can be, I mean, I think that's that place of making that contact, making that meeting somewhere in there, even if it's with intense aggressiveness or, you know, whatever that person is really asking for as a way of like, we need to connect.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are coming in just want that connection.
Absolutely. People need that. People seek that. We're human. We want to feel that way. For sure, for the most part, depending on who you are,
right,
and what you do. Very good. Well, before we wrap up, everyone, Art, if you could, again, let us know where we can find you, where you're located, some resources that we have to get a hold of you. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
Okay, so you can reach me at artginley@gmail.com. You can find my website at integrativewellbeingboulder.com. And you can also give me a call at 720-514-9506.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Art. And to wrap up here, check us out. This Sunday, Lauren and I will be at the Four Corners Group Psychotherapy Society running an institute for an hour and a half. It's going to be an experiential activity-based program. We are super stoked. It is the first of its kind there. Check it out. Art's going to be there on Saturday. Super stoked. Namaste, brother. Stoked to see you there. It's going to be a good time. If we're in the same institute, that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right. See what comes up in 5 hours of group therapy. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in today when both of us definitely have an empty tank. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
The Head Therapist is out. Peace up, friends and family.